everyone, hope you're doing well on this lovely sunny July day. For once the good weather has actually made it to Scotland, so I am totally in the mood to just do a quick video and then get out in the sun. Today I'm going to be doing the Try a Story tag, which Jen did quite recently, and while I hadn't watched the original Try a Chapter tag, I thought this was quite a good idea because I'm kind of in the mood to read a short story collection at the moment, and I've got so many sitting on my shelf that I thought, why not give this a go? It's probably a good way to decide which one I want to take on next. In case you don't know, the premise of the tag is basically you choose a few short story collections. I've gone for 5, and you read the first story from each of them, and from that you can decide which one you want to read now and which ones you are going to put back on your shelf for later, if you're even going to get to them at all. So the 5 short story collections that I've got here with me today are Antarctica by Claire Keegan, We Don't Know What We're Doing by Thomas Morris, Mermaids in the Basement by Marina Warner, Don't Try This at Home by Angela Redman, and finally we have How to Breathe Underwater by Julie Oringer. And I've had most of these for quite a while, so I'm quite excited just to get stuck in and find out what I make of all of them. So I'll just go through one story collection at a time. Okay, on with the reading. So I've just read the first short story from Antarctica, and this one, I don't know, I was quite surprised by it, to be honest, because for one thing I'd heard that it was quite a wintry book, the kind of book that you would like to curl up under a duvet with, and I didn't necessarily get that vibe. The title kind of makes you think of, you know, snow and cold, crisp weather. It's only called that because the first short story features a character who watches a documentary on exploration in the Antarctic. Despite this, it was set at Christmas time, so I kind of feel like it might be one that I'd like to return to later in the year, just because if all the other stories are set around Christmas, I like to match up the time of the book with the time of year. It makes me feel a bit weird to read something Christmassy in summer. As for the actual content of the first short story, it was about this woman who decides to leave her family one day, just get on a train and go to another city to find a guy to sleep with. And I was a bit surprised at how dark it was actually, because at the start she meets this guy and I kind of had this feeling like, oh, something's gonna go wrong, there's something not quite right about this. But it seemed to progress and I was like, oh, actually this seems to be like they're just striking up quite a healthy relationship. And then at the end it's like bam, something happens, and that is not at all where the story goes. So it did take me by surprise. I did enjoy it, but it just wasn't necessarily what I was prepared for. I've also heard from a lot of reviews that people have sort of praised Claire Keegan's writing for being really poetic, but I didn't really get that. I thought the language was quite simple. There weren't really many passages that I was like, oh, the language there is really nice, I want to underline that and hold on to that sentence forever. It was just kind of there to move the plot along, which I think is fine. I can still appreciate that, but it's always a bit disappointing when your experience doesn't necessarily match up with the review. So I think this is one that I will be leaving for later. Next short story that I read was the first one from We Don't Know What We're Doing, and the first short story was called Bolt, and basically this one was about a sort of young video shop assistant. It's the last day before the company closes down forever, and one of his last customers is his ex-girlfriend's counsellor, and they kind of strike up a conversation and end up sort of going home together. It's not a spoiler, it does say in the back of the book, a young video shop assistant exchanges the home comforts of one mother figure for a fleeting sexual encounter with another. And that is basically this story in a nutshell. I quite liked it though. It was quite kind of light-hearted. I think there was a lot of kind of poignancy under the surface of it if you looked for it, but if you took it at surface level, it was still kind of just quite a fun, enjoyable story. And I thought there were a lot of layers to it. You know, you have to decipher the fact that this character is currently living with his ex-girlfriend's mother and then goes home with this other woman who it's revealed is 56 years old. So I think there's a lot to be said for sort of the relationships between sort of young men and mother figures in this. I just thought it was really interesting from that perspective. So that's definitely a strong contender for one that I will pick up soon. My third short story collection that I dipped into was Mermaids in the Basement. And I really like the way that this book is divided up actually. I've never really flipped through it enough to notice this before, but there are 11 short stories in this collection and they're divided up into 3 sections. So the first one is Mothers and Sisters, which is 4 short stories, Husbands and Lovers, which is another 4, and then the final section is Fathers and Daughters, which is 3. And the first short story was called Be My Baby. It was basically about this nurse who, in wanting for a child of her own, decides to steal a baby from one of her patients because she feels that she is unfit to be a mother. She has a lot of very sort of strong moral values that aren't necessarily moral values that we would agree with nowadays, but this character has had a very religious upbringing and feels that single parents are a no-go. The only perfect family is the one that is sort of nuclear, with the working father and the caring mother, and because she finds a lot of families in her care do not match this description, she decides to take matters into her own hands, and it gets very creepy, very twisted. It starts with her sort of being hounded by the media as she's making a court appearance, and it deals a lot with sort of her mental state throughout the whole ordeal. I say ordeal like it's an ordeal for her, it's definitely not, it's an ordeal for the family she's put through this. But I also really liked the way that this was written. It's written in a sort of stream of consciousness style, which I thought really, really reflected the content of the story well, because she's undergoing this sort of like mental evaluation, and it was just really interesting hearing her thoughts sort of like bam, 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 loads of run-on sentences, because it sort of really matched the incoherence of her mind at that time. Another thing that I got from this is obviously Marina Warner is a renowned fairy tale expert. That is what she's most known for. And I couldn't help but be reminded of Rumpelstiltskin with this, with the whole stealing a baby trope. I thought that was really interesting because I don't think I've read any sort of short stories or fairy tale retellings that deal with Rumpelstiltskin, so that was quite refreshing. Again, I really like Rumpelstiltskin as a story, so if you know any sort of stories that deal with that or are retellings, I would really appreciate it if you could let me know in the comments down below, because that's something I would be interested in pursuing further. My fourth and penultimate short story collection that I tried was Don't Try This at Home by Angela Redman. I've heard a lot of hype about this one all over BookTube, and can I just say, I think it lives up to the hype. I really enjoyed the first story from this, and I think it's definitely one that I'll be picking up soon, if not immediately after this video. So the first story in this collection is called Don't Try This at Home, and it tells the story of a woman who decides to split her boyfriend in half so that she's got 2 of them. They're perfectly formed, they can have independent lives, but she's not completely satisfied with this, so she decides to just keep chopping and chopping and chopping until she has literally, well, I was going to say literally hundreds, it's probably not that many. She has metaphorically hundreds of boyfriends, and they're all sort of doing their own thing. It means that they can all have separate jobs, and she finds it quite good because it means that they've got loads of money because they're all working in separate places. But it comes with its downsides as well, in that some of them have left her completely and have gone on to form other families, and I just thought it was a really, really fun story. I really enjoyed it. I think it also has that kind of moral where it's saying don't try and change people because no one's going to be perfect, and the more you try and change the more they will resist and things will fall to shit basically. I thought Angela Redman was really quite witty. She has a lot of dry wit in this story. Some of my favourite lines were she first of all decides to split her boyfriend outside so it wouldn't leave a mess, and she says, I suppose we could have used the kitchen floor but I didn't want to scratch the tiles, as if that's like the biggest concern when you're chopping a man in half with a blunt shovel. And then later on she's split her boyfriend into quarters. By this point he's actually her fiance, and they go down to the pub, and she says it cost more to buy drinks than usual but it didn't matter at the time. And I just thought it was wee lines like that that made me really enjoy this even more. So I think I will be reading this one very soon. My final short story collection is How to Breathe Underwater by Julie Oringer, and this is another one I've heard a lot of hype about over BookTube, especially from Mercedes. I have to say I was kind of a bit I wasn't let down by it. It was just very different from what I was expecting. The whole book sort of deals with young women in childhood and adolescence and the kind of life events that affect them and affect their judgment for the rest of their lives. The first story was called Pilgrims, and it was about this family who go to see family friends for Thanksgiving dinner, and there's loads of people there, there's loads of children, so the children all go out to the back to play on this sort of they call it a tree castle. It's basically an amazing tree house. Like, just the descriptions, I was like, I want to be a kid and play on that thing, that sounds amazing. But there's a lot of sort of tales of loss. The mother has cancer. The father of the family hosting the party has recently lost his wife and keeps her ashes and a vial of her blood on full display, and it's just generally quite dark. The ending is really gruesome. I was not expecting it, but something happens that I can't reveal because of spoilers, but I was just kind of like, did not see that coming at all. While I kind of enjoyed it and I thought that Julie Oringer's writing was really beautiful, I kind of feel like it's one I should leave for later because I've read a lot of really depressing stuff recently and it's not something I'm really kind of ready to take on at the moment. So there we have it. I've tried the first short story from 5 collections now, and from that I will say there are 2 books that really stood out to me that I think I might pursue very soon, and that is obviously Don't Try This at Home and We Don't Know What We're Doing. I think I will probably go for Don't Try This at Home first, just because it's slightly shorter, it'll be a quicker read, and it was the one that made me laugh out loud the most, and I think that's kind of what I'm in the mood for. I also think it would be quite good because I'm considering doing the booktubeathon, and one of the challenges is to read a book which has yellow in its cover, and this most definitely has yellow in its cover, so I think this could be one that I could read fairly quickly and count towards the booktubeathon if I decide to do that. As for We Don't Know What We're Doing, I really enjoyed it as well. I think I will read it fairly soon, maybe not as immediately as Don't Try This at Home. It's definitely one that I would like to read within the next month or so. Anyway, I hope you've enjoyed this. I'm not going to tag anyone because 1, I'm lazy, and 2, I don't actually know who still watches my videos. Feel free to do it if you want. That's how I did it. I wasn't tagged, I just thought it was a cool idea and I gave it a go. So I would be delighted to see what you come up with for the Try a Story tag. It doesn't need to be 5 collections, it can be 3, it can be 7, whatever you feel is suitable. I will see you in my next video. Bye!